Okay, hi there traders and welcome to Trade the Structure. So it's Monday morning here, start of the Asian market session. And we're just going to recap the major moves on coming into the weekend on US markets and European markets and so on. So we'll look at the key levels and some potential price action trades that we see setting up off the key levels, obviously, and just see sort of what's playing out. So we'll start off with ASX 200 now. I think US is still risk on, okay, into the indexes, and safe haven is not doing so well. You can see gold is just heading lower after it broke up into that, dragged in a lot of bulls with that big break up above 2000, and then it's back down again. So really just watching to see how that plays out. And I don't think safe havens are going to do too well unless, of course, there's some more, something to trigger some fear out of Russia and Ukraine. Now that keeps ticking along. Nothing much is changing there. It's not getting worse, it's not getting any better, obviously, but it seems that people are brushing that aside at the moment. The concern was that Russia would default on debt, which they paid 100 and something million, I think, to pay their debt obligations to the bond, which is the coupon. They paid that over the weekend, or they got that paid, I think, on Friday, actually. So that is why the overall markets continue to go risk on, and share markets just edge higher. Okay, so we'll look at start off. We'll look at the Australian market, then we'll go to obviously what's happening in Asian, then European, and so on. So we've got here, this is the ASX 200. This is on the 5-minute chart. So you can see that was the action on Friday, which is pretty much nothing. If you're trying to trade that, it was a tough gig. It really didn't go anywhere. It pretty much went sideways, sort of edging higher, flushed down into the close. So no one really wanted to add risk into the weekend yet. As soon as we come to the after our session, the overnight session, bang, went straight up. So that's because you've got a illiquid market, especially on the futures. When you're trading the SPY 200, you'll notice during the day there's obviously a lot more liquidity, and it seems to be the ASX traders were happy not to add risk, yet it took off at night. So they can do that a lot. You can chop around during the day, rally during the night, then chop around during the day, rally during the night. The whole time the market's moving higher. Okay, but for me, I'm not looking to be buying into this unless we get some sort of decent pullback to flush out some of these longs. Okay, so intraday, it's more about shorts where we're going to go to if we get some sort of lower high, because lower high leads me to believe that we're going to squeeze out some of these traders. If we get long, look, we could, if we just go sideways from here, if we sort of, chop around here from the open and we do this kind of action, yeah, we may get a higher low to work off an extension on that trend up. But if we get, you don't want to see action like this where it flushes down in the open, does nothing during the day, and they're just accumulating here as they're keeping the market down, and then it rallies again in the overnight session. So that means it gaps up on the open. So it's going to gap up today. The ASX is going to gap up. I think it's about 30, 40, 50 points, something like that. Can't quite remember, but you can see it from here. If we just measure that around here, 92 points. It's going to be a big open today, so we'll have to check on that, which means I'll be looking for shorts just off the bat, especially if we flush up. I don't want to be part of that. When you're such an extended market, I really want something to happen on the downside first before I look to get involved, and that means a good squeeze. Maybe squeezing out like this, picking something off the bottom here if you can. So the bigger picture, this is where we're at. This is a 4-hourly chart on the ASX 200. Now, if you just scroll out a bit, major double top up here. Okay, so what we've done, the market's pressed up, and it's a double top because we started getting through these kind of levels. Okay, you can see the market, it flushed through, extended. So that was kind of the anchor to the move up, if you want to put it there. The anchor to the move up, then we come down and flush that out. Okay, and then we come back and tested it straight back up to these highs and then failed again, failed miserably. So this is really an area where the bulls need to keep it above 73.34, which is going to gap up today. But this is the index, so this is already from 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. So this is not going to reflect a 90-point rally on the open. It's not going to gap up here. It's going to basically chop around from where it is. So on a 4-hourly chart, it looks like we've come into that resistance from below. We're coming off a higher low, which, yeah, it's a good thing, but it's failed there. 1, 2, it's failed through here, 3, 4. Are we going to fail off this level again? And because we've just flushed it, if we flush it and start to fail off that level, then there's going to be a decent move down. Okay, that's what you would expect. If we continue to grind our way higher, we might do something like this, get really choppy about this level, but continue the momentum up, then we're looking towards that 74.80 area. Okay, Hang Seng, we'll just take a look at that. That didn't do as much in the US session. It stopped moving up around 3 o'clock, 3:30, and then went sideways. So maybe they're looking to flush higher and then fade. I'll be looking sort of for something like that. If it does pop higher in the open to 22,310 and then fail off there, I'll be looking for a short and just looking for a squeeze of these longs. Otherwise, if we do get something like this and it starts to flush lower on the open, it tends to flush the opposite direction. Once they flush it down, squeeze them out, start accumulating, and run it up into the close. That's what I'll be looking for. But that's the two scenarios. Really, just got to wait to see how it opens. You've got these two little minor levels that held up into the close, 22,066 and up towards 22,209. So a couple of 100-point range just in here. Doesn't look that big on the chart, but it is 200-point range there. We could easily flush down, accumulate, and then rally into the close, or vice versa. If it gets choppy in between those ranges, that's going to be a bit tougher to trade. But just keep an eye on those two levels. Nikkei is pretty much, I'm on a 30-minute chart. Should be on a 5 actually. Let me just go back to a 5-minute chart. It was all one-way action. Okay, so that was the open on Friday at 10:45 Sydney time it opens, and then the index opens at 11. You can see that sort of accumulation here. Prime area to trade was in here, and that was somewhere around 4 o'clock. So that was about when the index closed. Going to be a massive gap up from the index, the underlying index. So it's going to be tough to be wanting to buy, just because that trend is up, wanted to buy up here because you're in a well extended market. If it keeps going, that's great, but you want to be working off a higher low. And I ideally want to see a flush on the open. I want to see a flush stick. Maybe you get chopped like this and then start to build off a higher low. Okay, if you want to go long, because it is, it's an established uptrend, but when the market gaps up, a few 100 points, it's really hard for buyers to be buying like that when you've got these terminology gap fills and things like that. So that could pressure the market or pressure sentiment just on the open anyway. No one really wants to, you buy the gap, there's a chance that you're going to buy the high, and then you get squeezed out on the pullback. So just be wary of that when it opens. Yeah, all in all, it could still pump up to 27,500. It could just continue that, grind its way up, and then flush lower off that level. Dow, we'll get on to US now. So we've got Dow and the tech. Just make sure I've got them up all right. The 30-minute chart here, you see trend is up. It looks like it wants to extend it to that 35,025 area. So that's kind of what we're looking at. I wouldn't be buying up here. I think it's well and truly extended. If you're buying just from this chart, at least if you're buying from the 30-minute chart, and that's what you're basing your trade off, your stop's going to be way down here. So you're better off waiting for a bit of a flush of this leg up, okay? Because it could extend. Yeah, you could buy it and it could extend, or it could just flush straight back down to 34,130 and then build a lower high and go down again, go down in even further. So if you're buying up here, then you could be, and you've got your stop down here, you could get, it's just a massive stop to be trading off these 30-minute charts. At least if you're trading intraday, you're looking a bit lower, maybe a 5-minute chart. Yeah, you'd probably still just want to wait for that minor pullback, see if you get sort of this minor pullback, and then see if it can extend again, and it's going to extend up into that level. So that's your aim. Okay, if we start to fail off this lower high, then you're aiming back down towards that 34, 130, 140 area. US Tech has really fought back over the last few days. It's come off this 12,965 area. Okay, the outcome's kind of becoming known at the moment. We've got some time up our sleeve, or the bigger boys have got some time up their sleeve. They didn't raise rates hard this time. There's the chance that we're going to raise it quite hard to try to contain inflation, but they're pushing that back. The Fed is saying they're being more aggressive down the track, which means that now we're okay for a while, about where we should be, just a couple of rate rises to keep the market happy. But it could be a bit of a pump up until we get the harsher rate rise to see what the Fed does later. I mean, they're all talk a lot of the time. They have been all talk for a while. There's going to come a time when it's going to have to be some action. But for now, until they're all talk, inflation is there, but it's the rate rise that the market's worried about, and they're not raising it as hard as what they potentially could do to contain that inflation, which means trend up. That means probably the down move is over factored in. Okay, and we're just unwinding that sort of sell off, and people taking opportunity to just jump into some bargains on the way up. So latest support holding is 13,940. Remember, we're on the 15-minute chart, so that was just one-way action up. If it comes back, I'll be looking for a long if it can hold that 14,320, hold a retest there, and then go up to 14,640. But for now, like most of the markets coming into the Friday close, are extended. Okay, that's extended. The US was extended. I don't want to be buying in an extended trade. I either want to be just sitting on the sidelines waiting for a flush lower and see if they can hold higher lows, or just waiting for it to see if it can go into resistance zone and then see if we get some profit taken, which means buyers have to sell. More sellers come in, sellers outweigh buyers, and down we go. And looks for see if we can get something on the short side for a squeeze. US, Germany, not US, Germany, the DAX is what I'm looking for. That, we had this move up. Whether that is, that's still, whether it just depends where you sort of take it from. Say where it is, the market is still heading higher. We're finding resistance at 14,510 area. Okay, so it's traded into that level a few times, potentially getting heavy. You can see momentum starting to roll over, which is not such a great sign for continuation higher. But there's no reason why it can't consolidate up here, consolidate and rally. Okay, but just don't get caught in some of these sort of consolidations, and then it just sort of fades off there. You want to be working off a higher low, just so you know where your risk is. So, for example, if that's the trade where you're looking for, you could have worked off that as a higher low. It just didn't work out very well. Okay, but you've got to know where your risk is. So really, if that's the extended, we failed off here a few times. As soon as you start getting to some lower highs, you might start to get something like this. Then you want to be on the short side, or at least just easing out of some longs. So for me, I'm just watching. I'm keeping an eye on basically that 14,510 area. See if we can sort of push back down and retest into these lows, potentially at 14,247, which is a couple hundred points. So to get 40, 50 points shouldn't be too bad as long as you're working off your lower highs for that squeeze. UK, similar sort of thing. You know, it hasn't failed off recently, but it's failed off there, you know, a while ago. The end of last month, end of the Feb, failed off there quite a few times. We got this big sell-off. We've grinded it all the way back again. Straight back into that level, really worked its way back. It's just whether we're going to fail back there again or we're going to extend. There's a good chance that everyone's expecting it, so there could be sellers enough to get in and we keep getting the squeeze higher. And that's why it's important to be working off a lower high. You're not just going to, because if it just pulls back, if you're just selling there and all we do is see this little minor pullback, then start to do this, then it's going to go higher. Okay, and we're going to look to extend on that move up into 75.45. Okay, so for now, trend is up. You know, US, the trend is up. Everywhere, equity markets are fighting back. They're not so concerned about the war at the moment, which is a shame, but the market's not so concerned about that. It's whether we're just looking at the global markets. Okay, interest rate rises means it's good economies, low employment, but remember, employment's the kind of full employment everywhere. I think Australia's around full employment, the US is, not sure about Europe, but if they're full employment, you would think that these interest rate rise cycle is going to kind of constrain, and a lot of these the profits in the corporate companies have already factored in a lot of these gains. Currencies, Aussie, so the US dollar is sort of, it's on a daily basis, it's looking quite good. It's just hovering around the highs. You've got it sort of chopping around above 97.5 on the index. You can see this just in here, chopping around here. That's on a daily basis, chopping around here, but it's still holding. That trend is up. Okay, that's got to do with interest rate rises and yields and things like that. So still holding. If it does roll over, if we start to see some heat come out of that, then we're going to get these currencies moving higher. The Aussie is still holding up quite nicely. You can see that move down there. There's a big flush into 73.63, then held up and basically ramped up. So you've got sellers coming in. Spent, it was probably about the start of the European session. That was midnight, so that's the session before. Let me just check. Yeah, so that was the session before. Basically, we didn't do too much. We just hovered around here as the US didn't do too much either. So we could look to expand 74.28 as long as the US dollar starts to roll over. If it does start to lift the US dollar, then we're going to see that probably push down to 73.20, 72. But for me, if I want to work shorts, again, off a lower high. If I want to work along, just mark up some levels. You could probably mark up something like here. If it flushes there and rebounds straight back up again, then you know it was a flush and there's a good chance it's going to rally. Euro had a big flush through that 110.30 area. Potentially this could be a nice little high low. I'll be working potentially some longs. Okay, and that's what I'll be looking for. I want to see if it can. We may, in the European session, if we start to get something like this, then I'll be looking for a long off that and look for a long and a charge up to 11.27. See if we can do that anyway. All right, that actually looks quite good for a long. It just needs to work its way out. This needs to be a higher low. Don't mind if it flushes below this level, which was into the US session. If it flushes through there, that's fine. It could flush there because it's going to be about the start of the European session, yes. Pound is jammed up into that 131.90. Now, if that sort of grinds its way down, it could charge higher. Okay, it's holding these higher lows. We were talking about this big base that built a while ago. These high lows started to hold. Okay, the momentum was going to shift to the upside, which it did. Come all the way up here, flushed out this level at 131.90. It's backed off back in the 30.88, but they're holding it up off that 31.88 level again. And you're sort of seeing these higher lows hold, which is great. If we may need to flush a bit lower, but there is the chance that that's a zone through here, which buyers are happy to hold at 131.71. Just watch for that flush. And if it's going to flush like the euro, maybe we do something like this at the start of the European session, and then we rally. Okay, it needs to drag in some potential. We've got some buyers up here, maybe squeeze them out, drag in some sellers if it wants to go high again, and then jam straight back up off a higher low. US yen. Now, US yen has just been powering higher, obviously with the factors, you're looking at US dollar been holding up with rate rise cycle. So the more they talk about inflation, less fear around US dollar is going to shine. The yen's not. The yen's more of a safe haven bid, and they'll buy that up as a safe haven, but it's not at the moment. So that's getting sold down. The US dollar's going up. So it's all sort of one-way action on the yen. Now we were talking about this on Friday. The market flushing down, may potentially holding through this 118.55 level, which it did nicely. You had some longs you could have worked off just in here. It's in hindsight, obviously, or you've got some nice little retest. It's held there. So you've got, that's kind of your boxing up that level, break out through retest. You got the retest, it kept going up. Okay. So whether we're going to do the similar type of thing here, we're just going to see if that zone can consolidate through there, start to do something like this, consolidate and then hold and then go again. Okay. Gold. Now gold, safe haven at the moment, reacting to the US dollar. US dollar's holding its highs at the very least, potentially going to grind back up again. With gold, you would expect without sort of safe haven bid, it's going to grind lower. Okay, whether we go down into this level or to 1886 is a different story. We may just chop around in here and build a key higher low off this area. All right, so that's there. That's obviously something that could play out. If we do something like that, we hold that, flush down, and a bit hold, then expect that's a key higher low, bigger higher low, which would means we're going to attack back up to 1950. Okay, but for now, the move is down. Oil's not really doing anything. It's holding below that 106.70 area. Potentially, it's going to hold below there today. You can see this move up wasn't as convincing as we got the previous move up or what we saw in the past. That's not as convincing. If we can chop around here for a while below that level, we could roll over again and test back into 93.87. Which it doesn't matter because I've just filled up the car. So hopefully coming to Easter, I can get to fill up again before we go away for a few days and get a better price. But anyway, I'm not going to hold out for too much hope there. So yeah, crude, I want to see if it can hold up into that 106.70. If it does, if it wants to go, you want to see if we can get, pump up, retest, and then go. So that's what essentially I'm looking for on the upside. If not, you want to see we hold below here today and start to chop around and get a lower high to work into. Coming into this European session, the US session tonight, that's what I'll be looking for there. Copper, it did push up. It's still biased up off this 98.20 area. It's still biased up into 103.65, but it's getting contained up here. Okay, so it's a broad range. This zone through here, it's kind of a broad zone. It's not just hard and fast zones. Well, levels to me are never hard and fast. They get, they're targets for flushes, they're targets for stop hunts, all that sort of thing. So it's kind of an area you want to be looking at, and you want to see a clear cut. If it's going to break through, you want to see a clear cut breakthrough. What we're talking about with oil, something like that, where it clearly breaks through and it clearly holds a higher low. Otherwise, it's going to come through and you're going to get sort of a clear break like that on the downside. And then if it flushes up and through, takes out some stops, tips up through, straight back down below, you're looking for a lower high. Bitcoin, just to finish off some cryptocurrencies. I thought they've just opened now. I thought they were going to sort of chop around. They did sort of trickle higher a bit, and then I think late last night, Sunday, Sydney time, they started to fade, okay, and come back down. So I want to see if this 41,250 level can hold on Bitcoin. It's kind of the area I'm looking at the moment. Whether we can hold here and start to get a bit of a bounce like something like this, or are we going to go straight through and do something like this? But either way, no short or long for me just yet. We haven't got a lower high, higher low. We just reacted. We just opened weaker. Okay, so that's what I'll be looking at. Bitcoin and Ethereum, much the same. You come into that 28.43 area. See if we can either flush in there and hold something with a higher low, and then we're going to trend back up again, at least to these highs, or potentially to 30 for 36. Or are we going to sort of try to fill that gap, get some lower highs coming into play for a break of 28.43? We'll wait and see. Right, that's it for me today, guys. Struggling to keep it shorter, but yeah, we'll keep working away at that. Thanks for joining me. Hope you enjoyed that. And remember, if you do like what you hear, it'd be great if you can get on the YouTube channel, subscribe if you haven't already, and just leave us a like. It'd be much appreciated and help us grow the community. Anyway, we'll speak to you again soon.